For all the credit that characters like Jack Sparrow and Barbossa get, we rarely focus on the real heroes of Pirates of the Caribbean. Now, it's true that the point of both the ride and the film series has always been about these scallywags, and nobody's even denying that, but we also can't forget that the original focus and perspective of these films, especially the entire trilogy, was on these main heroes. Going back to the production and the writer's first intention, Jack Sparrow was always meant to be a supporting character. Of course, Johnny Depp took him to another level and made him the main attraction, where in Curse of the Black Pearl, Jack is actually the meandering one through the plot. He isn't the main source of conflict, yet he steals the show at every turn. Where instead, the true main factions are Barbossa as the villain and the young Will Turner, the son of one of Jack's former crewmates, Bootstrap Bill, who was the hero. And it was Bill who forced the crew to stay cursed by sending that gold piece off with his son. His journey is more potent, torn between his familial past, his present with Elizabeth, and his father. And that's why Will is the hero of pirates more than Jack or anyone else. He's not fully a pirate, and he's not fully a royalist in that way. Just a blacksmith in the wrong place, but at the right time. And the reason I really want to talk about Will is because of his relationship with the other characters, with Elizabeth, with Jack, and especially his father. That father-son dynamic gives the story its real heart, what it really means to balance duty and sacrifice in a pirate's life, and what it means for someone like Will to be stuck into the worlds that he came from. Yes, you could say Elizabeth grows into a more co-protagonist with her own strong moments of development, eventually becoming the Pirate King in the third film, but she doesn't quite carry the same personal weight and stakes that Will eventually has, especially with Davy Jones holding his own father. And Will is a character who grows through his understanding of this very world, largely thanks to Jack Sparrow. The ups and downs of their unlikely friendship help him become a better man and truly respect what it means to be a pirate. And it's also worth praising Orlando Bloom for taking on such a role during the same massive period he was playing Legolas in the Lord of the Rings trilogy, one where he was initially hesitant about playing in the pirate genre and the image at the time since they were box office bombs, until Jeffrey Rush, ironically Barbossa himself, convinced him to do it otherwise. It became the best choice ever because Will is a really good character. And in The Curse of the Black Pearl to begin with, Will Turner starts out as this humble blacksmith apprentice in Port Royal, quietly in love with Elizabeth Swann as the governor's daughter. He's a skilled swordsman who crafts beautiful blades but lives a straightforward, honorable life far removed from piracy and the image of what he expects. But everything does change when Barbossa and his cursed crew kidnap Elizabeth, mistaking her of course as the child of Bootstrap Bill because of the gold medallion she carries that was on Will when he was a young boy. And this is something Will refuses to sit idle for against the will of the governor and immediately takes action, showcasing the courage and determination that define him. And to do so, he teams up with the eccentric Jack Sparrow in the Turning Point, the one he actually helped arrest originally, where Will breaks him out of prison, where they steal a ship, recruit a crew in Tortuga, and set sail to rescue Elizabeth. Along the way, Will learns the shocking truth. His father was a pirate who served on the Black Pearl and stood up to the mutiny. This revelation forces Will to confront his own heritage, torn between the upright values his mother taught him and the pirate blood running through his veins, creating the core internal conflict that drives his arc. And Will's heroism in the film shines the brightest on Isla de Muerta. When he discovers that his blood is needed to lift the Aztec curse, he boldly offers himself to Barbossa in exchange for Elizabeth's freedom and the safety of the crew. He fights fiercely alongside Jack, helps turn the tide in the chaotic battle, and ultimately plays the key role in returning the final pieces of gold to the chest, breaking the curse once and for all at the cost of Barbossa's life. And his selflessness saves the day more than once. Even in the climax back in Port Royal, Will proves his loyalty and moral code. When Jack is about to be hanged, Will does step in to rescue him, declaring Jack is a good man despite being a pirate, risking everything, his own freedom and future, for someone society tells him to despise. Where by the end of the film, Will has transformed. He wins Elizabeth's love, earns a pardon, and stands as the true hero and heart of the story. His journey is not about rescuing a girl, but about discovering who he really is and choosing to honor that even when it leads him into the pirate world. And one of the more important things about Will in Curse of the Black Pearl is that he serves as the audience's main point of entry into this wild pirate life. We don't start as hardened scallywags, we experience everything through the eyes of an ordinary hardworking blacksmith, literally as he comes on the ship as a young boy, where he just begins as a man at the forge crafting swords by the day that impresses the royalty while secretly dreaming of a life with Elizabeth Swann, the governor's daughter who feels completely out of reach. In this part, she's already being courted by Commodore Norrington, a man of status and duty wealthy and older than her as the beginning shows, leaving Will to quietly pine from the sidelines of society. But then of course everything explodes. As we talked about, Elizabeth is kidnapped, where he's suddenly desperate enough to form an alliance with the infamous Captain Jack Sparrow. He goes from shaping metal in a quiet shop to stealing ships, fighting undead pirates, and sailing across the Caribbean. Will doesn't understand this chaotic pirate life at all in the beginning. He feels honorable, straightforward, and believes in doing things the right way, the values that constantly clash with Jack's crude pirate nature. And through this confusion and reluctance, the audience feels the same disorientation and wonder of being swept into this dangerous, unpredictable world. That emotional core hits the hardest when Will learns the truth about his father. He did always believe that William Turnahh was just a merchant sailor, but Jack did reveal that his dad was a pirate, one who stood up for what was right and paid a terrible price for it. But this revelation shakes Will to his foundation. Suddenly he's faced with the possibility that his pirate blood runs into his own veins, and grappling what it means for his identity. Is he destined to become like the man he's always been taught to fear and despise, or probably something else? This internal struggle gives the film its heart and its stakes, and through this journey, Will sees firsthand how brutal and unforgiving the pirate life really is, with the betrayals, the curses, the constant danger, and the heavy cost of loyalty, and also the crudeness of Tortuga. Yet through it all, he chooses to act with honor, even when it means risking his own life to save Elizabeth and confronting his father's legacy. And Will isn't just along for the ride, he is the moral compass that helps us, the audience, navigate the gray areas between right and wrong in a pirate's world. In the end, Will's character is so important because he represents growth and self-discovery. He starts out as an outsider dreaming afar, but ends up being right in the middle of the adventure, forever changed. His perspective makes the story relatable and emotionally grounded, reminding us that even an ordinary man can rise up and become the true hero when the world of pirates comes knocking. And in the final act of Curse of the Black Pearl, Will does learn what truly a pirate's life means, full of deals, double crosses, and difficult choices. After offering himself to Barbossa in exchange for Elizabeth's freedom, he does get swindled. Barbossa technically keeps his word by not harming the crew, but he strands Jack and Elizabeth on a desert island anyway. It's a harsh lesson in how pirates use loopholes and broken trust, where he sees how treacherous the world can be, yet how it doesn't break his sense of honor but sharpens it. What even moves Will even more is watching Jack Sparrow in action. Even after being betrayed, Jack cleverly worked his way up back to the fight. He uses wits, timing, and understanding of the pirate code to turn the tables on Barbossa during the chaotic battle on Isla de Muerta. Will witnesses Jack's brand of loyalty and resourcefulness firsthand, where he really cares. These moments teach him that being a pirate isn't about thievery or chaos. Sometimes it's about outsmarting the real monsters and standing by your crew when it counts. And by the time the curse is lifted and the smoke clears, Will has a new respect for this complicated life. He's no longer this wide-eyed blacksmith who looked down on pirates like society told him. He's fought alongside them, bled with them, and sees the gray areas that Jack navigates so well. This growth culminates in one of Will's most defining moments back in Port Royal, where of course, as we said before, when Jack is sentenced to be hanged, Will steps out without hesitation, where he risks his own neck to free Jack, declaring that the pirate is a good man, and how Elizabeth sees this and stands with him because they've all been together, and together they help Jack escape to the Black Pearl. In that act, Will now understands the pirate code in his own way: loyalty, honor among thieves, and a repaying a debt. He chooses to let Jack go free rather than to cling to the rigid rules of society because he knows he is a better man. Through these experiences in the last act, Will understands that life is not black and white. It's messy, dangerous, and full of tough calls, but it can also bring out the best in people. He doesn't become a full pirate, but he also gains the wisdom to walk between both worlds, making him a perfect hero for this story. But of course, just when Will finally thinks he could settle in a normal life with Elizabeth and being married happily ever after, the pirate world pulls him right back in the second film. On what should be their wedding day, Lord Cutler Beckett of the East India Trading Company arrives and arrests Will and Elizabeth for helping Jack Sparrow escape. Beckett offers Will a deal in this part: track down Jack Sparrow and the Black Pearl, and in return, he will receive a pardon for both himself and Elizabeth, where of course he probably knows it's the dangerous game that Beckett is using to his advantage, where once again Will is forced to leave the life he wanted and dive headfirst back into the dangerous world of pirates and Jack Sparrow. This search for Jack leads Will into even deeper waters in Dead Man's Chest. He teams up with his old allies, faces new threats, and continues to evolve as he learns more about the true cost of the pirate's life. His loyalty to Elizabeth is the one thing that drives him forward, but built on another powerful motivation that is quietly building, as we will see, where the quest finally brings him face to face with the one thing he's been searching for his whole life: his father. Captured and pressed into service aboard the Flying Dutchman, Will comes face to face with Bootstrap Bill in a cursed heartbreak of how he's covered and bound to Davy Jones for eternity. Their meeting changes everything for Will. The man who once struggled with the pirate heritage now has a deeply personal reason to fight, saving his father who sacrificed so much for him. At first, of course, speaking when the curse was freed, that he'd find peace finally dying out, but he just joined one curse for the next curse. From this point, Will's journey gains an even more weight to the story. He's no longer just helping Jack or protecting Elizabeth, he's determined to break the curse that binds his father. This father and son story becomes one of the more emotional cores of the later films. Will's growth from the simple blacksmith we met in the first movie is incredible to watch, where he becomes bolder, more strategic, and willing to make impossible choices. His story shows how one man can get repeatedly pulled into the pirate life, not by choice, but by love, loyalty, and blood. From dreaming about Elizabeth in his forge, to bargaining with gods and captains to save his father, his path reminds us why he remains the heart of the entire saga. And while Dead Man's Chest is packed with spectacle and Jack Sparrow's main usual chaos and quest to actually save his life, it's actually more important to Will Turnah's character more than anyone else. This is where his personal stakes skyrocket. After being pulled back into the pirate world by Lord Cutler Beckett, he's now forced to actually see the perspective of where his father now lives. This reunion creating that inner conflict for Will, where on one side he's still holding on to his sense of duty, honor, and love for Elizabeth, but on the other side he's carrying this burning need to free his father from eternal servitude to Davy Jones. His sense of guilt also weighs on him. He had unknowingly killed his father once by lifting the Aztec curse, but now he's desperate to make it right. This father-son story takes center stage and gives Dead Man's Chest its emotional heart far beyond Jack's quest for immortality or freedom. Will's arc here shows real growth and struggle. He makes deals with dangerous people, risks everything in a game of liar's dice, and even begins to bend his own moral code if it means to save Bootstrap. His conflicting duties to Elizabeth, to Jack, his father, and to his own principles pull him in every direction. It's messy, painful, and deeply human, which make Will feel more relatable and heroic than ever. And by the end of the film, Will is no longer just tagging along with Jack's adventures. He has his own clear mission and a deeper understanding of sacrifice. This transforms him from the honorable blacksmith we met in the first film to a man willing to do whatever it takes for the people he loves. It sets up something and everything that comes into At World's End and cements Will as the true emotional core of the trilogy. So in At World's End, Will Turnah's journey takes a more greater urgency and complexity, especially in the first half of the film. After the events of Dead Man's Chest, Will teams up with the resurrected Barbossa to sail to the end of the world and rescue Jack Sparrow from Davy Jones' locker to find one of the pieces of 8. But even while everyone else is focused on saving Jack and uniting the pirate brethren, Will does have his own clear purpose. He needs the Black Pearl because it's the only ship fast enough to go against the Flying Dutchman and finally free his father. This half of the film shows how far Will has come. He's no longer this wide-eyed honorable blacksmith. He's become a strategic power player willing to make the tough alliances. He bargains with Sao Fang for the ship and the crew, and even makes and begins secret deals with Cutler Beckett in hopes of securing his father's freedom. These choices create real tension with Elizabeth and the rest of the crew. His single-minded focus on saving Bootstrap starts to pull him away from the people he loves, especially Elizabeth, highlighting the difficult choices that define a pirate's life. Will's purpose here in the first half is deeply personal. Everything he does, rescuing Jack and navigating the dangerous waters of betrayal and politics, is ultimately in service of ending his father's suffering. We see his growth as a leader and a fighter, but we also see the cost. This father-son love bond that began back in the first film now drives Will to darker places, forcing him to weigh loyalty, love, and sacrifice in ways he didn't imagine. Even while the group faces impossible odds and the journey begins with supernatural waters, Will remains grounded in the heart of the story. His arc reminds us that while Jack chases freedom and Barbossa chases power, Will is fighting for family, an emotional anchor that keeps the audience invested in Will's fate. And by the midpoint of the film, Will Turnah had fully stepped into the role as a man caught between the worlds, part honorable hero, part ruthless pirate. His journey in the first half sets up one of the more powerful conclusions in the entire trilogy for a character, and proves once again why he's the true emotional core of Pirates of the Caribbean. And looking at him overall in this film compared to the man we met in Curse of the Black Pearl, it shows how much he transformed. Because you go from this honorable man who is just rescuing the girl to someone who is willing to be pragmatic, ruthless when necessary, in service of freeing his father. He's making alliances with Davy Jones, Cutler Beckett, Sao Fang, whoever he can, just because he wants it. This version of Will is far more complex. Yes, the pain from Elizabeth's kiss with Jack and the interrupted wedding still lingers, but that's not his only drive. His purpose runs much deeper. It's about confronting the legacy of Bootstrap Bill and the pirate's blood that he once rejected. And by making deals, betraying trust, and navigating through the cutthroat pirates of pirate brethren, Will is essentially becoming the very thing he fought against originally, a true pirate. He's walking that same path his father once did, but with his own sense of honor guiding him. him. This evolution makes Will's arc so compelling. He doesn't lose his core goodness, he adapts it to a world that demands compromise. So every strategic move, every risky alliance is motivated by his love for his father and a desire to break the cycle of suffering that began with Bootstrap sending him with a cursed pirate code years ago as a young boy. In many ways, Outworld's End is the payoff of Will's entire journey. The idealistic young man from Port Royal has grown into someone who understands the pirate's life on a profound level. The sacrifices, the grey morality, and the heavy weight of loyalty. He's not just saving his father, he's embracing the destiny he was born into. And Will Turnah's transformation from rigid idealist to pragmatic pirate is one of the most satisfying character arcs in the series. It gives the epic scope of Pirates at World's End real heart and makes his choices feel earned through real years of struggle, loss, and hard-won wisdom. The climax of his arc in At World's End comes during the massive maelstrom battle against Davy Jones and the East India Company. In the middle of this chaotic fight, Will finally marries Elizabeth, with Barbossa officiating the wedding amid cannon fire and crashing waves and undead creatures, which of course has to be one of the most romantic scenes in all of cinema and the entire series. It's the payoff for their long, complicated love story and gives Will a brief moment of happiness before everything goes down. This is when he boards the Flying Dutchman and fights Davy Jones himself. But of course, in this brutal confrontation, Jones does stab Will through the heart, mortally wounding him. But in that final desperate moment, Jack Sparrow makes the ultimate choice and helps guide Will so that Will can stab the heart himself. With his dying strength, Will fulfills that role and kills Davy Jones, freeing the seas from Jones' tyranny, where he sacrifices his own mortal life. The crew, including his own father, then cut out Will's heart and places him in Dead Man's chest. Will rises as the new captain of the Flying Dutchman, where this act not only saves his father and the crew, but allows him to also fulfill his long-held purpose, where now he becomes the new Jones who ferries souls lost at sea, bound by the ship, while finally giving his father peace and a chance at redemption alongside him, which, to another point on his father's end, serving alongside his own son, is also one of the most heartfelt endings to this entire act. And Will's ending himself is both bittersweet and heroic. He does get that one day with Elizabeth before beginning his 10-year duty at sea, but he finally has become the man who can bridge both worlds. From his simple blacksmith dreaming of a better life to the immortal captain who saves everyone, his sacrifice shows the true cost and honor of the pirate's life he once feared. He becomes burdened with varying souls, but takes that task to its fullest extent, learning what it meant to be. In the end, Will Turnahh completes his entire arc, embracing the pirate's destiny tied to his father's legacy, wins the love he fought so hard for, and becomes the hero of the entire series that was needed. His arc is just one of the most complete and emotionally satisfying in the entire series of Pirates of the Caribbean. In the end, he does stand as the unsung hero of the entire saga. While Jack Sparrow does get the spotlight and the memorable one-liners and Barbossa brings the theatrical villainy, it's Will who carries the emotional heart and moral center of the story from beginning to end. It's about learning on a journey to navigate the gray areas of pirates while holding on to the core goodness, growing from someone who feared and judged that world to someone who understands it deeply, embraces its costs, and ultimately helps shapes its future. Through his relationships with Elizabeth, Jack, and especially his father, he brings real humanity and stakes to the wild adventures that swing around him. He does have that brief appearance in Dead Men Tell No Tales, but that serves more as the epilogue than anything else, so you don't need to dwell on that. The real story, however, the powerful, complete one, lives in the original trilogy where Will Turnahh quietly becomes the hero we all needed. In the end, Will reminds us that Pirates of the Caribbean is truly about not just rum, adventure, and rebellion, but about the people caught between the two worlds trying to do right by the ones they love. He is the bridge between land and sea, between ordinary and legendary, and for that, he deserves far more credit than he usually gets. Will Turnahh isn't just a supporting player, he's the soul of the entire franchise and what it means for a pirate's life. I'm all done. Goodbye.